At the movies, with his mistress, the billionaire had no idea his pregnant wife was sitting behind them. A swirl of scandal, a dash of betrayal, and a fateful night at a glamorous movie theatre, that's where this jaw-dropping saga begins. Alexander Beaumont, a powerful billionaire whose name graces the city's most exclusive skyscrapers, slips into a plush velvet seat beside Olivia Harrington, his dazzling but clandestine mistress. Unbeknownst to them, Isabella Beaumont, Alexander's wife, slides into the row behind them, her heart pounding and her mind swimming with suspicions. In the hushed glow of the giant screen, truths and lies flicker alongside the film. What unfolds next will upend the Beaumont family, sparking chaos, revenge, and revelations that no one saw coming. Alexander Beaumont was not just any billionaire, he was the billionaire. With a fortune built on real estate developments across the globe, Alexander's name was synonymous with luxury and wealth. If you walk down Madison Avenue in Manhattan, you'd see the Beaumont building looming high, a monolith of steel and glass that symbolized modern decadence. Across the Atlantic, in London's Mayfair district, the Beaumont Suites stood as a testament to his uncanny business acumen. Yet, behind every shimmering success story was a man who could never quite satisfy his relentless hunger for more money, more power, more thrills, and, as it would turn out, more love. Or, more precisely, more attention. For years, Alexander had been a devoted husband to Isabella Beaumont, a refined socialite who exuded elegance in every aspect of her life. Isabella possessed a gentle, caring heart beneath her polished exterior. Tall, with silky dark hair and intelligent grey eyes, she was as much a partner in Alexander's success as he was the face of their empire. From philanthropic galas to groundbreaking ceremonies, the husband and wife appeared before the cameras as the perfect power couple. The tabloids loved them, the city admired them. One day, everything changed. The shift was subtle at first, an unexplained late-night business meeting here, a dinner with a client there, sporadic absences that lasted for hours. Isabella began noticing slight cracks in Alexander's punctuality and devotion. He no longer lingered over their morning coffees, no longer texted her sweet nothings in the middle of the day. Whenever she confronted him, Alexander would gently brush away her concerns with an affectionate smile or a half-hearted promise. Just business, Bella. It's always business. But Isabella had grown anxious. Her heart recognized the discord long before her mind gathered enough proof to confirm it. While she could not pinpoint the exact moment her husband slipped away into someone else's arms, she had more than a hunch that her marriage was under threat. A woman's intuition was rarely wrong. Yet, Isabella found herself paralyzed between protecting the life she loved and confronting the man she feared might betray her. Determined to cling to her dignity, she donned her best clothes, forced her brightest smile, and continued to hold Alexander's hand in public, all while searching for a clue, any clue that might explain what was going on behind his well-composed facade. That clue came in the form of a rumor whispered at a high-society charity gala. The rumor was a name, Olivia Harrington. She was everything the tabloids adored, a striking, charismatic figure with an air of mystery about her. Although not from a wealthy family, Olivia had managed to ascend the social ladder by forging connections with influential figures. She mingled with the elite, radiating a blend of confidence and vulnerability that enchanted those around her. An acquaintance, Clarissa Bingham, had leaned in close to Isabella at the gala, her jeweled earrings glittering beneath the chandeliers. With thinly veiled concern, she said, "My dear, I don't mean to alarm you, but rumors are swirling that your husband has been seen with a certain woman named Olivia Harrington. I don't believe it, of course, but you should know these things." Isabella's heart skipped a beat. She smiled politely, refusing to let the shock show on her face. "Thank you, Clarissa," she said softly, trying to control the trembling in her voice. "I'll look into it." From that moment, the name Olivia Harrington became an echo reverberating through Isabella's days. She heard it mentioned in fleeting whispers at parties, saw glimpses of it in tabloids that speculated about her husband's new business partner. Meanwhile, Alexander remained skillfully evasive. Business was booming, he said, and with multiple real estate projects in the works, he had to keep a busy schedule. But Isabella had grown suspicious to the point of near obsession. She pored over credit card bills, travel itineraries, receipts left in Alexander's pockets. Tiny inconsistencies began to stack up: unaccounted charges at high-end boutiques, a suspicious hotel reservation in Chicago, dinner receipts for two at restaurants. Alexander had never once mentioned visiting. Late one evening, when Alexander was out, Isabella steeled herself and searched her husband's study. There, tucked away behind the thick first volume of a law encyclopedia, she found the silver bullet, an airline ticket from New York to Paris, not in Alexander's name, but in Olivia Harrington's. The flight details matched the same date Alexander had told Isabella he was traveling to Brussels for a business conference. Isabella realized she had the proof she needed, yet the weight of confirmation was more painful than the uncertainty. A swirl of heartbreak, fury, and betrayal threatened to consume her. But rather than confront Alexander immediately, Isabella decided to bide her time. She wanted to catch her husband in the act. She wanted him to feel the sting of being discovered without warning. She needed that. And so, wearing the mask of the loyal, unsuspecting wife, Isabella continued her outward routine, hosting dinner parties, visiting galleries with her circle of friends, and greeting Alexander with a gentle peck on the cheek whenever he returned home late. One chilly Friday evening, as the lights of Manhattan shimmered over the Hudson, Alexander casually mentioned to Isabella that he would be working through the weekend. A crucial meeting with foreign investors required his presence at the city's downtown office. Isabella feigned fatigue and pretended to have her own social commitments: a spa day, some real estate volunteering, anything that would keep her occupied. In truth, she had arranged for a private investigator, Vinnie Carlson, to follow Alexander's every move. Vinnie was a discreet, meticulous man. He had worked with Isabella's father, retired Judge Harold Sinclair, on several sensitive cases in the past, and thus he owed Isabella a favor. Sure enough, late that Friday night Vinnie called. "Miss S. Beaumont," he said in a hushed tone. "Your husband just stepped out of the Beaumont building with a young woman. They got into his car. I'm tailing them now. Where are they heading?" Isabella asked, gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. "They seemed to be going to the Cathedral Plaza Cinema." Isabella felt her breath catch in her throat. A movie theater. It was the last place she would have expected Alexander to go, especially since he regularly criticized how time-consuming sitting through a film could be. Yet here he was, going to a public cinema with another woman. A sudden impulse rose within her, one that both frightened and thrilled her. She would go there too. A quick glance at the clock confirmed that there was still time for her to dress, drive, and arrive. She hurried into her closet, changed into a simple yet elegant outfit: dark jeans, a stylish blouse, and a warm trench coat that could help her blend into the crowd. She opted for minimal makeup and tied her hair into a low ponytail, hoping to remain as unrecognizable as possible under the subdued theater lighting. Her heart pounded as she navigated the streets. By the time she pulled up to the Cathedral Plaza Cinema, a lavish, old-world-style theater known for its ornate decor, it was near the film's start time. The neon marquee lights reflected off the puddles along the curb, painting the sidewalk with flickering colors. Isabella paused at the entrance, trying to steady her breathing before stepping into the lobby. A vintage chandelier illuminated a grand foyer with plush red carpets. Isabella scanned the area, straining to see if Alexander and Olivia were in sight. She spotted a row of tall, gilded mirrors along one wall and briefly saw her own reflection. Her wide eyes and taut expression betrayed her anxiety, but she steeled her nerve. Suddenly, she spotted Alexander's unmistakable silhouette at the far end, near the concession stand. His posture, the slope of his shoulders, and the way he leaned in, close to a slender woman with wavy auburn hair, no doubt. That was him with Olivia. Isabella felt a surge of anger as she observed her husband's clandestine tenderness, the way he gently brushed aside a stray lock of Olivia's hair, his lips curving into the kind of smile he rarely showed at home anymore. Isabella's heart clenched, a swirl of heartbreak and determination fueling her next steps. With quick thinking, Isabella ducked behind a large cardboard display promoting an upcoming film. She watched as Alexander and Olivia purchased tickets and then disappeared into Theatre 5. Not wanting to draw attention to herself, Isabella strode casually to the ticket counter, put on her best calm voice, and asked, "One for the same movie they're watching in Theatre 5, please." The teenage cashier smiled. "That'll be $18.50, he said. Isabella handed him a crisp bill, ignoring his curious glance at her trembling fingers. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over her as she entered the dimly lit corridor. The comforting smell of buttered popcorn filled the air, and a hush had settled over the hallway as people funneled into their respective theatres. Isabella paused at the threshold of Theatre 5, scanning the rows for Alexander's distinctive figure. She spotted him about 2/3 of the way down, right in the centre. Next to him, Olivia's profile was illuminated by the faint flicker of the pre-show trailers. Isabella slid into a seat directly behind them, 2 rows behind to be precise, but close enough to observe their interactions. She peered between the seats in front of her, feeling her heart thud in her chest with every breath. The movie previews flashed across the screen, but Isabella barely registered them. Her mind was racing, her eyes fixated on the couple. She watched Alexander drape his arm around Olivia's shoulder. She saw how the young woman leaned her head against his chest, gazing up at him with adoration. Her blood boiled, and yet she forced herself to remain silent. As the film began, Isabella noticed little details that cut her to the quick, the gentle squeeze of Alexander's hand on Olivia's knee, the murmured words that made Olivia stifle a giggle, the sweet, small gestures that once belonged to Isabella alone. Minutes turned into an agonizing hour, and Isabella found herself torn between wanting to scream at the top of her lungs and wanting to bury her face in her hands and run. Halfway through the film, Olivia whispered something into Alexander's ear. He nodded, and they both rose. Isabella instinctively shrank down in her seat to avoid detection as they made their way to the exit, presumably for a quick bathroom break or a concession run. A million thoughts surged in Isabella's mind. Should she confront them now? Should she snap a photo for evidence? Or should she keep watching, see if there was more to learn? Grappling with these questions, she decided it was best to remain inconspicuous. She followed them at a distance, out into the corridor, watching as they slipped hand in hand toward the restrooms. Once Alexander disappeared into the men's room, Olivia lingered near a water fountain, checking her phone. This was Isabella's chance. She could get a closer look at the woman who had dared to intrude upon her marriage. She approached Olivia from behind, her heart pounding so violently she feared it might give her away. But at the last moment, Olivia turned abruptly and nearly collided with Isabella. "Oh, sorry," Olivia started, before her gaze briefly landed on Isabella's face. There was a quick flicker of recognition, as if Olivia sensed something familiar, but she couldn't place it. Isabella averted her eyes, muttered a soft apology, and briskly walked away, pretending to head for the exit doors at the far end of the corridor. Once she was at a safe distance, she chanced to glance back. Olivia was still standing there, her expression puzzled. But within moments, Alexander emerged from the men's room, and Olivia's attention snapped back to him. She looped her arm through his, and the two strolled back into theatre, 5 together. Laughing at something Alexander said, Isabella's chest tightened. She returned to her seat, the hush of the theatre feeling suffocating. If Olivia had recognized her, she gave no sign of it to Alexander. But Isabella could no longer concentrate on anything that flickered on the screen. Scenes played out, dialogue was spoken, but all of it was muted by the raging internal monologue about betrayal. When the movie finally ended and the credits began to roll, Isabella braced herself. The overhead lights slowly brightened. Alexander and Olivia lingered in their seats, exchanging soft words, looking at each other as though they shared a private joke. Isabella carefully rose, pretending she was just another theatre-goer, and positioned herself a row behind, separated by a few seats to the side. As they stood up, she could hear bits of their conversation. "That was an interesting movie," Olivia remarked, stretching her arms. "But I think I'd rather see something more uplifting next time." Alexander laughed softly. "Well, next time we'll pick something more cheerful. Maybe something at the opera. You'd look beautiful dressed up for that." Olivia beamed and placed a hand on his chest. "I'd love that." The casual talk of annex time hit Isabella with a pang of anguish. To these two, it wasn't just a fling. They were planning future dates, forging emotional ties. She wondered how long this had been going on, but she didn't have time to brood. They were heading out of the aisle, and she needed to follow without being seen. At the exit, the crowd from other rows pressed in. Isabella slipped behind a young couple, using them as cover. She nearly tripped over the red carpet in her anxious haste, but managed to keep her footing. Alexander and Olivia paused by a poster display in the lobby, engaged in whispered conversation. Isabella ducked behind a large group of teenagers, listening intently. "Let's grab a late bite," Alexander suggested, brushing a stray hair from Olivia's face. "How about the rooftop bar at the Beaumont Tower? It's private enough." Olivia smiled. "I'd like that, as long as there's no chance of running into someone who might, well, you know." Alexander's grin was confident, yet tinged with caution. "Don't worry, it's a private entrance. Few people know I keep a suite there. We'll be safe." Hearing her husband make references to the places they once shared as a couple, like the exclusive rooftop bar she had helped design, made Isabella feel physically ill. She recalled how Alexander had boasted that the rooftop's panoramic view of the city was the perfect spot for romantic evenings. Now, he was offering it to someone else. Before she could dwell on it further, they moved. Isabella hastened out the lobby doors, trailing behind. Rain had begun to fall lightly, the pavement glistening under the theatre's neon lights. Isabella watched as a black luxury sedan with tinted windows pulled up. A driver hopped out, umbrella in hand, to shield Alexander and Olivia from the drizzle. Slipping into her own car, Isabella waited until the sedan merged into traffic. Then, keeping her distance, she followed. The route was painfully familiar. They crossed the city, heading for the Upper East Side. The glimmering silhouette of Beaumont Tower loomed ahead, one of Alexander's prized developments, a statement of affluence and architectural innovation. It also housed private residential floors at the top, accessible by a special elevator pass. Isabella parked around the corner, unwilling to risk drawing attention by pulling into the building's main driveway. She saw the sedan ascend the ramp to the private parking area. For a moment, she considered texting or calling Alexander, just to gauge his reaction. But she knew that would do no good. Instead, she texted Vinny. "They're at Beaumont Tower. They plan to go to the rooftop bar or a private suite. Meet me at the corner of 72nd and Lexington in 10 minutes. Vinny replied almost immediately, "On my way." Sitting in her car, engine off, Isabella gripped the steering wheel. The wipers tapped out a soft rhythm against the windshield. She felt the storm brewing both outside and in her heart. She recalled her wedding day, how the light in Alexander's eyes seemed so genuine, how he swore he would cherish her forever. The memory now felt tainted, overshadowed by images of him in that movie theater with Olivia. There was a light rap on her window. Vinny stood there, dark coat collar turned up against the rain. Isabella rolled down the window a crack. "They're definitely upstairs now," he said. "I saw their driver come back down alone. Your husband and the woman must be on the top floors." Isabella exhaled slowly. "I want proof, Vinny. Solid proof. And not just for my own sake, but for leverage if I need it. This is bigger than just my broken heart. I'm not letting him drag the Beaumont name, my name, through the mud with scandal." Vinny nodded sympathetically. "I understand. Do you want me to go up there and see what I can catch on camera?" Isabella chewed her lip, contemplating the options. She could storm in herself, make a grand scene, demand an explanation. But that would leave her vulnerable. She had no idea how Alexander would respond. Her best bet was to let Vinny gather evidence. "Yes," she finally said. "Go, but be careful. If Alexander sees you, it might make things worse." "I'll wait here." Vinny nodded and disappeared into the rainy night. Left alone again, Isabella realized how alone she truly was. Her circle of acquaintances was wide, but her circle of genuine friends was small. She couldn't let anyone in high society know about this yet. It would spark endless gossip. Her family was scattered, with her father retired out of state. She could only trust Vinny for now. Time stretched agonizingly. 5 minutes turned into 10, 10 into 30. The swirling storm outside was matched by the tempest raging in Isabella's mind. Memories both precious and bitter flashed through her consciousness. She recalled her first date with Alexander, how he had surprised her with a candlelit dinner on a yacht. She remembered the time they had spontaneously flown to Florence for a weekend of art and wine, dancing in the moonlit Piazza della Signoria. All these recollections now felt like cruel illusions, overshadowed by the betrayal unfolding tonight. Her phone buzzed. It was Vinny. "He's not at the rooftop bar. Staff said he closed it early. He's likely in the private penthouse. No direct evidence yet, but I'll keep trying." Isabella stared at the words, her stomach churning. If Alexander and Olivia were alone in the private penthouse, that was as damning as it could get. How many times had he taken her there? The question battered Isabella's thoughts. She typed a reply. "Be careful. If you think it's too risky, come back. We'll figure another way." A few minutes passed, and then Vinny texted again, trying to get access to the floor. "Might need to bribe staff. Will update soon." Isabella clenched her jaw. She was tiptoeing on the edge of humiliating scandal and personal devastation. She didn't want her marriage to end in the tabloids, but she also couldn't ignore the facts. Her entire identity had been woven around the perfect image of Miss S, Alexander Beaumont, but she realized with a jolt of clarity that the foundation was rotten. An hour went by without word from Vinny. Isabella felt nauseous. She considered calling him, but she worried about distracting him if he was in the midst of delicate maneuvering. The rain pelted the roof of her car more heavily now. She flipped on the radio to drown out the anxious silence, only to hear a love song that made her want to scream. Finally, her phone rang. She picked it up so fast she nearly dropped it. "Vinny?" she said, her voice strained. "Yes, it's me," he said in a low voice. "I couldn't get onto the penthouse floor. Security's tight, and they recognize me from previous visits with your father. I did see him, though, from a distance. He was escorting her into the private elevator. It's definitely just the two of them up there." Isabella closed her eyes, the final confirmation ripping through her. "Thank you," she whispered. "Come back. We're done for the night." The next morning, Isabella woke with the weight of the previous night's events. pressing down on her chest. Her side of the bed was untouched. She had slept in a guest room to avoid facing the emptiness of the master suite. She checked her phone. No messages from Alexander, no excuses, no explanations. She discovered that at some point in the early hours he had returned, though she hadn't heard him. She ventured into the penthouse living area and found him there, dressed in a crisp suit, scanning through emails on his phone as though nothing had happened. "Working again so soon?" she asked casually, pouring herself a cup of coffee. Alexander looked up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. Perhaps he hadn't expected her up so early, or maybe it was the subdued note in her voice that caught him off guard. "Yes, another busy day. I was at the office late last night, meetings with overseas partners." Her anger flared at the bold lie, but she masked it with a small, knowing smile. "I'm sure," she replied, sipping her coffee. "Did they serve popcorn at this meeting?" He froze for a fraction of a second before forcing a quick laugh. "Popcorn? What are you talking about?" Isabella leaned forward, lowering her voice to a dangerously gentle tone. "Nothing, dear. Just that I heard a rumor you've been frequenting places you usually claim to hate, like a cinema, for instance." Alexander's expression flickered between confusion and guardedness. He shrugged and returned to tapping on his phone. "That's ridiculous. I haven't been to a movie in ages. You know I don't like wasting time that way." Feeling her composure slip, Isabella decided to hold her tongue. This was not how she wanted the confrontation to happen. She had to have more than just speculation if she hoped to corner him effectively and ensure she had the upper hand in whatever might come. Next, whether it be divorce proceedings, property disputes, or a silent arrangement for the sake of appearances, she would let him lie for now. She would allow him to sink deeper into the false narrative that everything was normal. Meanwhile, she would prepare her strategy. Days turned into weeks. Alexander continued to juggle his double life, and Isabella pretended to remain oblivious. She needed time, and she needed to be absolutely sure of her steps. Through discreet channels, she arranged for Vinny to gather every scrap of evidence possible: photographs of Alexander and Olivia together at restaurants, security footage from the Beaumont Tower's private elevator, testimonies from staff who had seen them together after hours. Isabella was building a secret war chest of information. On the surface, the couple still attended charity galas arm in arm. They posed for photos with philanthropic leaders and city officials. The tabloids continued to dub them Manhattan's golden duo, blissfully unaware that the marriage was crumbling behind closed doors. Yet in whispers, the name Olivia Harrington began to surface more frequently among the city's elite. Some claimed she was an entrepreneur, with her eyes set on philanthropic ventures. Others suggested she was simply a social climber hitching a ride on Alexander's coattails. Whichever the case, rumors suggested she was becoming bolder about her association with him. One such rumor reached Isabella through her friend, Christine DeWitt, who worked as a personal shopper for Manhattan's upper crust. Christine recounted a story of how Olivia had come into the boutique, requesting a gown suitable for a private evening in a penthouse owned by one of the city's wealthiest real estate magnates. Christine had recognized her from society magazines, but found it odd that Olivia insisted on subtlety, yet dropped broad hints about the man's identity. It seemed Olivia wanted the world to know, or at least suspect, that she was with Alexander Beaumont. Isabella took this new information as a warning sign. Olivia Harrington was no longer content to remain in the shadows. She was angling for a bigger role in Alexander's life, and by extension, in his fortune. That made her dangerous. If Isabella didn't act soon, she risked losing her place in Alexander's life, and possibly even her rights to the assets she had helped him build over the years. Desperate for guidance, Isabella confided in her father, Harold Sinclair. The retired judge was known for his no-nonsense approach to life, and upon hearing Isabella's plight, he let out a weary sigh. I always feared Alexander's ambition might outpace his ethics, Harold said, pacing his living room in upstate New York. But I know he loved you once. Maybe he still does, in a twisted way. You must proceed carefully, Bella. If you confront him without undeniable proof, he might spin the narrative in his favor. Harold rummaged through a stack of old legal volumes and pulled out a file. Here, he said, handing it to Isabella. Inside is the contact for an attorney friend of mine, Marcia Rowland. She specializes in high-profile divorces. I'm not saying you must divorce him, but if it comes to that, you'll need someone skilled on your side. Isabella swallowed hard, tears prickling at her eyes. I'm not ready to give up on my marriage, Dad. Harold's gaze softened. I understand. But you need to protect yourself. Wealth and power can corrupt even the best of men, and Alexander has been playing a dangerous game. Isabella tucked the file into her handbag, a lump in her throat. She hated that her life had come to this crossroads, deciding whether to salvage a broken marriage or protect herself at all costs. However, Harold was right. She needed leverage, and she needed a plan. That same week, she arranged a private dinner with a close confidant, Dr. Helena Murray, a psychiatrist who had been Isabella's college roommate. Over a quiet meal in Helena's townhouse, Isabella laid out everything, from the suspicious receipts to the humiliating night at the cinema. Helena listened intently, her brow knitted with concern. You need to be prepared for all outcomes, Helena advised gently. Even if you confront him and he begs for forgiveness, there's no guarantee he won't stray again. Men like Alexander often have a bottomless need for admiration and novelty, but you also need emotional support. This is traumatic, Bella. Don't face it alone. Helena offered to serve as Isabella's emotional anchor and connected her with a discreet support group for spouses of high-profile individuals. Isabella took the pamphlet, feeling both grateful and mortified. Still, she began to see that confronting Alexander with hard evidence would be the first real step toward healing or finalizing whatever would happen next. Despite all her preparations, Isabella hadn't accounted for one pivotal detail: Olivia's growing impatience and brazen moves. One evening, at a charity auction for the Children's Hospital Fund, Isabella found herself face to face with the Mistress. Much sooner and in a much more public setting than she had anticipated. The lavish ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and gilded decor. Wealthy donors strolled around in designer gowns and tuxedos, sipping champagne and bidding on expensive artworks. Isabella stood by Alexander, forced smiles plastered on their faces as they posed for photographs. Then, in a swirl of emerald silk, Olivia Harrington appeared. She made no attempt to disguise herself, greeting familiar guests with a radiant smile. After exchanging pleasantries with a few board members, she approached Alexander. The gall of it was breathtaking. Alexander paled, glancing sideways at Isabella. "Olivia Miss Harrington," he stammered. "I didn't realize you'd be here tonight." She gave him a loaded look, one that seemed to convey both delight and mischief. "Oh, I'm passionate about children's health care. I had to attend this fundraiser." And I must say, her gaze swept over Isabella. "It's a pleasure to see the illustrious Mistress Beaumont in person again." Isabella's stomach turned. She forced a polite smile. "How wonderful to see you supporting such a worthy cause, Miss Harrington." The measured cordiality in her tone was razor-sharp, just enough to convey that she saw through Olivia's facade. A tense silence settled between the three, broken only when a photographer sidled up. "Mr. Beaumont, Mrs. Beaumont, may I get a photo for the society column?" Without waiting for a response, he snapped a few pictures. Olivia, not missing a beat, stepped close to Alexander's side, posing as though she belonged there. Isabella's heart thundered. She felt rage, humiliation, but also a surge of determination. The old Isabella might have slunk away, but now she stood her ground, letting the camera capture the moment. Why? Because she wanted the world to see exactly who Olivia Harrington was, an interloper brazenly inserting herself into the Beaumonts' life. When the photographer moved on, Isabella excused herself. She needed air, needed to step away before she did something drastic. She slipped out onto the terrace overlooking the city. The cool night air stung her flushed cheeks. She heard footsteps behind her and turned, expecting Alexander. To her surprise, it was Olivia. "I see you're not in the mood to celebrate," Olivia said, her tone dripping with a feigned concern. Isabella narrowed her eyes. "And you are?" Olivia shrugged, leaning casually on the terrace rail. "Look, I didn't come here to make enemies. I genuinely support the hospital fund, and I have every right to be part of these events. If it makes you uncomfortable that I'm speaking to Alexander speaking, is that what we're calling it now?" Isabella's voice rose, tension snapping. "Do you think I don't know about you two? The movies, the secret dinners, the trips? I know everything." Olivia paused, a spark of triumph dancing in her eyes, as if she relished the confrontation. "He deserves happiness," she said softly, "and lately he's found it with me." It took all of Isabella's restraint not to slap her. Instead, she took a step forward, her voice trembling with quiet fury. "Don't you dare talk about what my husband deserves. You have no idea what we've been through, what we've built together. You think you can saunter in with your perfect hair and your sly smiles and take him from me?" Olivia held Isabella's gaze, not backing down. "Maybe if you had given him what he needed, he wouldn't have strayed. Men with power and ambition need excitement, passion. If you ever knew that, perhaps you forgot it along the way." In that moment, the air between them was thick with the shared knowledge of Alexander's betrayal and the lines each woman was willing to cross. The terrace door suddenly swung open, and Alexander stepped out, eyes darting between them in alarm. "What are you doing out here?" he asked, his voice tense. Isabella turned on him. "Saving you from further embarrassment, apparently." Olivia offered a saccharine smile. "We were just having a friendly chat." Alexander glanced nervously over his shoulder, clearly worried someone might overhear. "Look, let's keep this civil. This is a public event." Isabella shot him a look that could have frozen fire. "Yes, let's keep things civil for the cameras, shall we?" With that, she spun on her heels and strode back inside, leaving Alexander and Olivia in a state of awkward silence. The confrontation on the terrace accelerated Isabella's timeline. She could no longer stand by while Olivia publicly encroached on her territory. The next morning, she convened with Vinnie and Marcia Rowland, the lawyer her father had recommended. In a private conference room at a law firm, they laid out everything. Vinnie opened a portfolio of photographs, Alexander and Olivia, hand in hand at a restaurant, checking into a hotel in Chicago, attending a real estate conference in Los Angeles. Marcia flicked through them, her expression unreadable. Then came the credit card statements, flight itineraries, security footage, stills proof so damning it would leave any judge or mediator in shock. Marcia set her reading glasses aside. "This is extensive. If you decide to file for divorce, we have more than enough evidence to win you a generous settlement, asset division, spousal support, perhaps even leverage in controlling stakes of the Beaumont properties. Infidelity is still grounds in many states, especially with the prenuptial clauses you both signed." Isabella nodded, her hands trembling in her lap. "I know, but do I want to tear it all down? We've built so much together." Marcia leaned forward. "That's for you to decide. My job is to ensure you don't leave empty-handed. If you do want to salvage the marriage, we could use this evidence to push for an arrangement where Alexander ends the affair and commits to therapy. But I have to warn you, Miss Beaumont, it's rare for men with that level of power and arrogance, frankly, to surrender so easily." Isabella glanced at Vinnie. He gave her a small, supportive nod. She felt as though she stood on the edge of a cliff, facing a stormy sea. Whatever choice she made, there would be no returning to the old status quo. She breathed in, her voice wavering slightly. "I need a little time, Marcia. Let's keep all of this ready. I have a feeling events will force my hand soon." Marcia accepted this, but her final words rang with urgency. "Don't wait too long, Isabella. The longer you give him, the more he might manipulate assets or craft a narrative against you." Fate, as it happened, had a twisted sense of timing. Just 2 nights after the charity event, Isabella came home early from a fundraising committee meeting to find Alexander sitting in the living room of their penthouse, accompanied by none other than Olivia Harrington. The audacity took her breath away. They were seated on the plush white sofa, documents spread on the coffee table. Alexander looked tense, while Olivia held a pen, her face composed. Isabella walked in, letting the door slam behind her. She stared at them, a cold fury simmering beneath her controlled facade. "I wasn't expecting company," she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Alexander stood abruptly. "Bella, you're home early. Olivia and I were just going over some business proposals." Olivia cut in smoothly, waving the pen. "Mr. Beaumont is thinking of investing in my philanthropic startup. We were finalizing some details." Isabella threw her coat on a chair. "In our living room? How cozy!" She glared at Alexander. "You couldn't meet her at an office? Perhaps at the Beaumont building, or one of the hotels you frequent together?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "Isabella, please, let's not make a scene. I've told you before, Olivia is a valuable partner." For Isabella marched forward and slammed her hand on the stack of documents. "Don't you dare feed me that nonsense. I have eyes. I know exactly who and what Olivia is to you." Olivia arched a brow, maintaining an air of unruffled poise. "I can leave if this is a bad time." Isabella's glare pinned her in place. "You are not going anywhere until I say my piece." Alexander tried to place a calming hand on Isabella's shoulder, but she shrugged it off. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears and a wrath that had been building for months. She turned back to Alexander. "How dare you bring her here, into the home we share, into the space we built together?" Alexander attempted to calm her. "Bella, please listen." "No," Isabella spat, her voice trembling. "You listen. I've spent the last few months watching you lie to my face, sneaking around as though I'm too naive to notice. I gave you every opportunity to come clean, and yet here we are." "Isabella, calm down," Alexander insisted, stepping between her and Olivia. "Let's talk in private." Olivia, sensing the tension, quietly began to pack up her papers, but Isabella snatched them from her hands and threw them onto the floor, scattering them like fallen leaves. "You want these deals with him, Olivia? Take them and get out. But don't you dare pretend this has anything to do with philanthropic endeavors. You're after his money, his name, his status. You disgust me." Suddenly, the situation felt explosive. Alexander's face hardened. He was not used to being spoken to in this way. "That's enough," he roared, his voice echoing through the penthouse. "I won't be humiliated in my own home." A bitter laugh escaped Isabella's lips. "Oh, I'm sorry. Are you feeling humiliated?" "How do you think I feel, finding my husband flaunting his mistress in our living room?" Silence fell, the tension thick enough to slice. Finally, Olivia spoke, her tone unsettlingly calm. "Alexander, I'll wait outside," she said. "This is obviously a private matter." As she passed Isabella, she paused, looking her up and down with condescending pity. "I wish you clarity," Olivia murmured, before slipping through the door. Isabella and Alexander stood facing each other in the wreckage of scattered papers. Each was breathing heavily. In Alexander's eyes, Isabella saw a flicker of regret, but also anger and a hint of desperation. She wondered if this was the first time he realized just how far down a dangerous path he had strayed. "All right," she said at last, her voice quieter, but still trembling with emotion. "We're alone. talk. Alexander ran a hand through his hair. I never intended for it to go this far. It started as a business connection. Olivia had connections that could help with some philanthropic expansions. I was planning. We began spending time together. One thing led to another. Isabella's laugh was hollow, and you found something new, exciting, something you felt you couldn't get at home. He couldn't meet her gaze. I can't explain it easily. I felt trapped. Our marriage, my responsibilities, the constant pressure to be perfect. With Olivia, there was an escape. Tears welled up in Isabella's eyes. You think I don't feel pressure? I've stood by you, supported you. Do you know the weight I carry to maintain our social commitments, our household, while you build your empire? He looked up, anguish crossing his features. Bella, I'm sorry, but now that it's out in the open, can we find a way forward? Maybe we can talk to a counselor or... She held up a trembling hand. Don't you dare talk about marriage counseling after what you just pulled. You brought her here, into our home. Her voice cracked. You have no respect left for me at all. Alexander tried to reach out, but Isabella moved away. I do respect you, he insisted. I've always respected you as my wife, my partner. The tears finally broke free, trailing down Isabella's cheeks. No, you don't. You haven't respected me for months, maybe years. I tried to ignore it, to keep our perfect image, to hope you'd remember what we once had. She inhaled sharply, but that's gone now. Alexander's eyes glistened with tears of his own. I never wanted to hurt you like this. I didn't think. She cut him off, her voice firm. No, you didn't. Or if you did, you didn't care. Wiping her tears, she steeled herself. I have evidence of your affair. Alexander photographs, statements, enough to ruin you if I want. His face paled. You wouldn't. Her expression was resolute. Try me. He inhaled, realization dawning that Isabella was no longer the docile wife he could placate with excuses. What do you want, Bella? I want an apology, she began, her voice trembling with fury, and I want you to end it with her immediately. But even that may not be enough. Do you have any idea how much you've broken my trust? Alexander's shoulders sagged as though a heavy burden had finally struck him full force. I'll do whatever it takes, he said quietly. Tell me what you need. We can fix this if we both want to. In the days that followed, a tense stillness settled over the Beaumont penthouse. Alexander apologized repeatedly, insisted he had cut ties with Olivia, and even offered to show Isabella his call logs and emails. He proposed couples therapy, suggested a break from the social circuit, and asked if they could travel somewhere private to reconcile. Isabella said little, letting his remorse seep into the walls. She still felt raw, struggling to believe that the man she married could so easily become a stranger. Meanwhile, rumors flew through the city's rumor mill, fueled by the showdown at the charity event and Olivia's brazen appearances. Whispers reached Isabella's ears. Olivia had been telling friends that Alexander was soon to divorce his wife. She was claiming that she would become the new Mistress. Beaumont, that they would be a business power couple, unstoppable in their philanthropic pursuits. Outwardly, Alexander denied it all, brandishing text messages he sent Olivia to sever their relationship. But Isabella wasn't sure what to believe. His words said one thing, her lingering doubt said another. Every time he left the apartment, she wondered if he was running to Olivia's side. Every time he checked his phone, she questioned whether it was truly a colleague texting about a property deal, or if it was the other woman still lodged in his life. Finally, Isabella decided she could not remain in limbo. She arranged one final meeting with Olivia in a public place so as to avoid any undue drama. She chose the central atrium of the Beaumont building itself, ensuring that Alexander's staff and security were nearby. The glass ceilings soared overhead, letting in streams of sunlight that cast bright patches on the marble floor. Olivia arrived wearing a chic white blazer and tailored trousers, her hair styled in loose waves. Despite the tension, she moved with cat-like poise. She spotted Isabella sitting on a sleek bench near a modern sculpture and approached with guarded curiosity. "This is unexpected," Olivia said coolly. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Beaumont?" Isabella rose, meeting Olivia's gaze head-on. "I want to make something clear. Alexander says he's ended things with you, but I know how these affairs can linger if not fully cut off. I need to hear from you face to face that you will stay away." Olivia studied Isabella, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Alexander made his choice, did he?" She shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Well, if that's the case, I won't force myself on a man who doesn't want me." Isabella's jaw clenched. "I don't buy this act. You might think you can wait him out, sabotage our reconciliation, but you should know I have enough evidence to make your own reputation suffer if you push me." The veneer of calm in Olivia's eyes cracked slightly. She stepped closer, her tone sharper. "And you should know that if I chose to go public with certain details about Alexander's business practices and your willingness to turn a blind eye, neither of you would come out unscathed. Perhaps we'd all lose, but you'd lose more, wouldn't you?" A swirl of anger and fear pounded in Isabella's chest. She realized that Olivia was, indeed, a formidable opponent, not just a flirtatious social climber. She had resources, cunning, and was prepared to strike if cornered. But Isabella refused to back down. She stared Olivia down, letting the moment stretch like a taut wire. "Let's not pretend any of us wants a scorched earth outcome," she said, voice cold. "I've said my piece, and I have the upper hand, no matter what you think you know." Olivia's lips curved into an enigmatic smile. "We'll see." Leaving the Beaumont building atrium, Isabella felt a strange sense of relief wash over her. She had confronted Olivia, stared her enemy in the eye, and refused to flinch. On the drive home, she contemplated her next move. She could file for divorce, wield her evidence, and end this chapter of her life. But part of her, despite everything, still wanted to see if Alexander's remorse was real, if their marriage, once the envy of Manhattan, could be rebuilt on a new foundation of honesty. That evening, she found Alexander in his study, reviewing architectural plans for a new development. The moment she stepped in, he put everything aside and stood. "Bella," he said softly, "is everything all right?" She took a slow breath. "I met with Olivia." His face paled. "Why would you?" She held up a hand. "Because I needed closure. I wanted her to know she can't just waltz back into your life whenever she feels like it." He took a step toward her, his voice earnest. "I told you I'm done with her." She studied his expression. There was a sincerity in his eyes she hadn't seen in a long time, perhaps not since their early days of courtship. "I believe you want to be done with her," she finally said, choosing her words carefully. "But rebuilding trust doesn't happen overnight. If we're going to try, then you must understand that I will have doubts. I will have questions, and I need to see real, tangible changes." He nodded, relief flooding his features. "I understand. Whatever you need, Bella. Counseling, time apart, anything, just please give me a chance to show you I can be better." Isabella exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "All right," she said, her voice quieter now, the edges of her anger softened by exhaustion. "We'll try counseling. But know this, if I ever catch a whiff of dishonesty again, if I see the slightest indication you've returned to her, I'll walk out the door. And I won't do it empty-handed, Alexander. I have all the evidence I need." He swallowed, nodding solemnly. "I understand." They stood in silence. For a moment, the gravity of the new, fragile accord settling upon them. Outside, the city lights glimmered, the pulse of Manhattan's nightlife pounding relentlessly. For a brief instant, Isabella remembered that long ago night when Alexander proposed. He had knelt on a rooftop helipad, of all places, with the entire sparkling skyline laid out before them. He'd said, "This city is ours to conquer, as long as we stand together." A younger, more hopeful Isabella had believed him wholeheartedly. Now she wondered if that vision could ever be recaptured. Still, a seed of cautious hope stirred within her. Perhaps they could reforge a bond from the wreckage of betrayal, or perhaps it was only a matter of time before the final fracture occurred. Either way, Isabella realized she had taken back her power. She was no longer the naive wife in the row behind them at the cinema, silently weeping at the sight of her husband with another woman. She was a woman who had confronted reality, and for better or worse, she would decide her own fate. And so ends this stormy chapter of the Beaumont saga. Where betrayal once loomed large in the flickering shadows of a movie theater, new beginnings now whisper faintly through the corridors of a penthouse perched high above the city lights. Will Alexander and Isabella rebuild their life with a renewed commitment, or will the spectre of Olivia's allure keep haunting them? In the world of high society and billion-dollar deals, nothing is ever truly set in stone. Yet one thing is certain: Isabella has found her voice and her power. If you enjoyed being swept away by the secrets, scandal, and hidden passions of this real-life drama fiction, remember to like this video, share it with friends who love a good story, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create even more captivating tales. Together, let's continue exploring life's most thrilling turns, one story at a time.